Right. Let's go. What's happening here? All right. I think we have landed. So let's hit record. All
I'm our
right.
first like.
You're our first like, so
I like us.
you like us. Yay! Let's see if anyone else likes us. I just saw a heart, but that might have been yours because there's a small. There's Laura. Laura gave one too. So,
Hi,
I
Laura.
guess we're a happy threesome here.
Woo!
And Jana. Okay, we have all we need. Now we can get going, right? The four of us
All
and
is right in
three.
the world.
All is right. So what's going on, Danny? It was like we only missed 1 week together, but it feels like it's been like a couple of weeks since we did a show. Like, well, it has been. It's been two, but it feels longer. It feels longer.
I think there was like a couple timeline shifts since I was gone. Your show was so good. Did you have notes and an outline before you went into it, or were you winging it the whole time?
No, I opened Windows and I was just moving through the windows. Like I had the windows open as prompts, right? Because the sort of genesis of what had happened, right, is like I'm busy working, laying all the foundation and getting my framing in place for my series, which is, you know, from a completely different perspective than I once looked at it about MK Ultra, right? So mind control. And so I'm looking at all of those uh sort of symbolisms and sigils that go along with that as it just comes up in the research. And then when I was just flipping through Instagram one day, there was that video about maglev trains, and I noticed how that looked exactly like that sort of symbolism. And so it just started this like free association of a bunch of stuff that those were the things that I thought of, that each thing made me think of the next thing, made me think of the next thing. And I've been holding on to it for weeks, and I was like, finally, like, I have to do it or I'm going to forget the thread.
Yeah, you did such a great job. I guess what I meant was like your intro was so clear. Like I like before you jumped into it, the way you laid out what you were going to do and what you thought your series was going to be was just so clear. It was such a great remember that sex cult I dabbled in the Ohm, what the fuck were they
The
called?
belly
What
button
taste?
thing, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they had this thing called safe porting.
Right.
Um, and that remind me of like a like kind of conceptual safe porting that like we knew what journey we were going on with you, and I really liked that.
So that I just kind of stated on the fly because I had thought about like I didn't write anything out, but I'd been thinking about all day, okay, how am I going to explain to people what I'm about to do and then make what I do reflect what I said I was going to do.
Yep.
Right. So yeah. I
Bravo. A
It's a
plus.
lot of work. I'm so used to having the feedback of it, if nothing else, the person who I'm talking to's face. And so like now I'm going to go into like an extended series where not only am I not going to be talking to a live audience, I'm going to be like just talking to the black screen while I record it and trying to figure out how to sort of pace things, how to let people know what's going to happen, and then make sure that that is what happens and sort of close the loop at the end. So I've been kind of thinking about these things a lot, and I'm also working I'm working with somebody on what will be like the graphics or the symbolism for the show, and
Oh,
like this
nice.
person has a way of and I'll say who it is when it's time, but like this person has a way of presenting their material that I find really clean and clear and easy to understand, and working with them also is like that. And so
Yep.
I'm using it as a learning opportunity as well in terms of like pacing and like not biting off more than I can chew, but like not leaving too little meat on the bone, kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know what you're saying. It's like I'm still learning to get comfortable staring at a green light and just talking. It feels a little bit insane.
right.
Like this is what crazy people do. But you seemed really comfortable. And what I noticed was like And I know you had a lot of screens going, but like you didn't seem like you were too concerned with like staring into the camera per se, but you seemed very relaxed. Like I noticed like you were laying back and you seemed really comfortable. Like honestly, I know I texted this to you, but it seems like you're kind of just right. I think it's going to be your just right show structure because you just dropped in and it seemed like so easy and so fluid and it was freaking great.
Well, thank you. The topics are the things that have been the most like in my mind for more than 20 years now. This has just been me trying to like sort out like where all the pieces belong. So I'm super familiar with like what those are and why I think they're important and how they connect. And so now it's just like being able to explain something that has always been an internal process, right? Like you don't have to generally explain yourself to yourself, but when you like jump that wall and try and make something that you've been living with inside for a long time make sense in a way that even if a person like disagrees or doesn't completely understand because they haven't experienced it, they can at least sort of like make the connections and sort of care about why this would be important to you or someone else, right? So thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
it was
you.
awesome.
Thank you. So we were just chatting for a couple of minutes before we started about the adventure that you were just on, and I don't know that you want to talk too much about that adventure, but you've had some clarity around things based on that. And so, before we dig into the clown show du jour and the clips that accompany it, like let's reflect a little bit on your insights from your experience. And I've been observing some of the same things in myself for at least the past year, but really like two or three. So
Okay,
go
so
there.
I went to Primitive Skills Camp in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. So I was camping in the desert. The Sonoran Desert is an ass kicker. Like I walk out my door and there's a ton of cactus, no question, because I live in New Mexico. But it's different in the Sonoran Desert. Like it's, hundreds of different species of like the most intense killer cactus. So it's really intense conditions. It was super hot in the day, super cold at night, camping in a tent. And then, I'd walk into like the main part of the gathering and there were a bunch of different workshops. So I learned awesome things. I took a workshop, 10 different ways to make fire. I took 2 different knots workshops, a workshop on shelters, knife safety, water, like where to find it, how to purify it, store it. I carved a bear. I did a bunch of things. There was stuff on like brain tanning and blacksmithing, and it was awesome what they offered. The conditions were pretty intense. There was this, so there were a couple things. One was I wouldn't so I'm used to like Burning Man, right? Or now Confluence or whatever, where everyone's like super friendly and super warm and they just like want to meet each other with their highest selves, and like it was not like that, right? Which was fine because my whole intention was I just want to learn. I'm here to learn things and I just want to get along. I just don't want conflict. I don't want problems. So I wasn't trying to like meet people. When I would go to the workshops, I mostly just stayed quiet and observed all the attention seeking behavior from the other students. Like I was just really observing humans and like what a weird species we are.
Right.
But the biggest challenge, which I mentioned to you, is there's a subculture there. I think it's a subculture. I don't know. Maybe it's the dominant culture of these people who are like into the cosplay of wearing buckskin and not a lot else, and barefoot, and a lot of like homoerotic like group rubbing, a lot. And I was just doing my best to stay positive the whole time. So like I made a commitment, like I'm not gonna say anything negative. I'm just gonna endure. But the last day for me, like all the rubby buckskin, aside from the fact that like it's the worst landscape to be barefoot. And this whole like cosplay crew were barefoot. And every time I walked by the med tent, there'd be another barefoot buckskinned, rubby cosplayer with like cactus needles in their feet, of course, every time. So it was an experience. The classes were great, the teachers were awesome, and I don't think I'll be going back.
Barefoot buckskin cosplay. Writing down possible titles. There we go.
But what I learned about it, like, which was what you and I were talking about, is I had a realization at the end of last year, which I have been having, but I finally articulated it and owned it. And it has been a total game life changer for me. And that is that most people suck. And when I shared this in my group coaching community, people were bummed as though I was being negative. And I was like, no, this is actually a really positive realization for me, because I can adjust my expectations and I can adjust how I meet people, and I'm far less disappointed or emotionally invested. So going into this, remembering that people suck and dealing with people who weren't very friendly or warm, like, it didn't faze me. It was totally fine. It was just like, oh, and here's a rock that I'm going to step around. It was just like another parameter like that.
Okay. So couple of things. I thought you were joking about the buckskin cosplay.
Oh no.
Like,
Oh no.
okay, because whenever, like, I don't go to anything that would be considered like survivalist or primal survival, whatever. But like, I have been at things where there's like a portion of the event that is like, we're going to learn some off-grid skills or whatever it is. And like, most of those people, like, to me, I've not seen that, what you're talking about. I usually just see like, middle-aged men with dad bods and hiking clothes, and, who are all excited about their truck or their new toy or something like that, right? And then, some, interesting granola chicks or right, or whatever it is. But I have not ever heard of nor observed the thing that you are talking about. But yeah, so that's interesting. What is the coolest thing you learned? If you had like one thing that was your favorite, that was the coolest thing you learned, what was it?
The coolest thing I learned, which I was also really good at, was at the end of my knife skills class. They had us practicing different cuts, and they gave me a big chunk of wood, and I did this thing called, I think they call it feather wood,
Yep.
where I made all these little curls so that it was just its own tinder, and I rocked it, and I like blew my teachers away with how well I did it, and so we lit it on fire and it worked really well.
All right, guys, you heard that. Dani's good with a knife, so if you see her with one, be careful. I was the 3 hours I spent learning survival skills or whatever, I was good at the knots.
Okay, so were you good at remembering how to do them after they
Yes.
taught you?
Yes, right. Because I think to me, it's kind of like like finding your way through the maze or solving the puzzle, or like remembering like the dance move you did once and it felt really good, but you weren't trying to do a thing, so you have to kind of remember and reproduce that or whatever it was. Yeah, I was good at the knot tying. That was my best event.
Okay, so I did two different knot classes, and one thing that was tough was that the teachers had two completely different techniques for the bowline knot.
Mhm.
And it created like a lot of controversy, but
Ah.
I bought some 550 rope to practice all my knots. And Ross saves a lot of knot videos on Instagram, so we're gonna be knot practice buddies. But when I built my shelter in my second knot class, all the knots, like, I remembered the knots that I needed, and I was the one that executed when our group was building the shelter, so that felt good.
All right, practical. We're able to put it from just knowing it into practice, so that's good. Okay, so I agree with you when attending most things, right? Like, especially like when there's the like unknowables about other people you haven't met, like having either few or no expectations, or being very clear on what your intent is and not distracted by anything else, does help you to manage the experience, right?
Totally.
Yeah, so I have that. But you also, when we were talking before, and you were like, you realize that you don't know about like group activities, right?
Yeah. So They've always been a little challenging for me, but I think like anytime I went to Burning Man, I always had a better time if I had a mission, if I was doing like an art installation, if I had a project.
Right.
That's how like Confluence and Music and Sky work, because I'm there to work. I have something to do. But
Right.
in general, like I'm just being more honest with the fact that like group situations are not the most comfortable for me. And in any group situation, I'm always like on the total outskirts, the farthest out from the group, just like kind of taking all in. And honestly, my favorite day at this event was where I decided to skip all my classes and hike by myself out into the boulders and just lay on a rock for several hours. That was the best time that I had.
Yeah, the group thing is interesting, right? I think for me, like I'm fine with group activities when they're like a 3 to 4 hour group activity, right? Like especially something that either I'm interested in, or something that like I'm not interested in, but there's going to be interesting people there, right? Then I can kind of go for a couple of hours and I sort of like it. But I have come to the conclusion that I don't like ongoing group activities. Like I don't like things that go on for multiple days type of thing. And it's not like a problem. It's not necessarily like something wrong with everyone else or the thing. It's just like I realize for me, like I'm a very like social and extroverted person when I feel like it, but when I don't feel like it, I am not. And if people have that expectation that you're going to be either as chatty as you are on the videos or as chatty today as you were yesterday, and then you're not feeling that way, then it becomes like this sort of uncomfortable like thing where I just want to go and hide, right?
Yeah.
So like that's one thing. And then the other
But
thing,
wait, there's one thing I want to say to what you said,
yeah,
which was if the people are interesting.
right,
And that's really the key. And what I realized at this event, and again, I had no I was just there to learn it wasn't about the people, is like primitive skills is not enough of a Venn diagram of crossover
yeah,
for intellectual exchange.
yeah, no, right, well,
Which was fine, and
right,
that helped me just like watch everyone, like I said, vie for attention in all the classes, just watch the personalities needing to. It's like I just wanted to learn. Like, I don't care what
right,
you do. Like, I don't care about anything you have to say. I care about what the teacher has to
right.
say.
Clarity of intent. So clarity of intent helped you sort of manage it, right? Like even if I'm someplace where the people are interesting, like the ongoing togetherness for some reason for me like becomes challenging. Like different if we're all staying separately but getting together for a few hours a day, like
Yeah.
that can work really well for me. But I noticed that like I'm kind of the same way with like going to parties. Like I don't like going to festivals or things like Burning Man or whatever. Like I want to go to the party for like 4 or 5 hours for the part that I want to go for, like go balls to the wall and then like go home and be quiet and lay down and watch tennis and eat something and take a nap and or whatever it is, right? I don't like to sort of be out there and on for like so many hours or whatever it is, right? For 2 days, 3 days or whatever. But then also a lot of times when you're dealing with group activities, like really like there's one sort of binding interest or topic, but that usually with some of these things like that's not all you're doing for several days, so there becomes like all of these other activities that have generally like little or no interest. For me, I have no little or no interest in. And so then if you're with the right people, it can become just like, okay, we're having a good time and we're just kind of like not even doing the things we're supposed to be doing. And that can be fun. But if it's not that, then it's just like, oh my God, like the people and the things, and you know what I mean? And to be clear, I'm sure some people feel that same way about me. So I'm not saying that there's something wrong with them and I'm right, but just the group dynamic. Like I can't say that there's never an exception to that. Like I have had some experiences that I'm like, actually, no, that worked. That was just right. It was lovely. It was just the right length of time, just the right amount of people, right? But overall, I'm hesitant about a lot of group activities.
Oh yeah, I am super hesitant. So someone was blowing up my phone today with all these like, I don't know, political activist events, and I was just being very nice because I could tell she was super excited, and it was very kind of her to invite me. But there was another aspect of me that's like, have you met me? Like, I would not want to do any of these things.
Right.
I want to sit at home and mend things.
Right. So, well, I'm glad you're back. I
Thank you.
missed you, even though I had a good show on my own. I missed you. I think I said at the end, I'll be relieved when Danny's back facing me next week. So you are, and I'm relieved. All right. So, I know, like, what I know you caught some things before you went into the purgatory of primal skills. And then you've had a few days since you emerged from that scenario. So, what has had your attention?
Okay, so before I went in, I watched Adam Curry. I watched Mike Benz. I didn't bring did you bring the Nicole Shanahan that I sent you from Twitter?
No, because I figured you would,
I
and
didn't pull it up.
it was so over the top that like I just don't almost don't even know. Like it's not like like ripping her apart for this is going to be different than ripping apart, Russell Brand or whatever it is, right? Because like I don't know, it's like staring at a car accident. Like I feel more bad doing it with her than I do with Russell Brand, but like it's so over the top that I think we have to, and I figured you'd bring it. So
Should we just start there?
let's just start there. All right.
Okay, and then I have I have a generalized overview for what's capturing my attention on the flip side, but let's just start with the oh my God, it's just so it's not ugh. Can I have screen share?
Oh, I forgot to do that. Hold on a
It's
second.
like remember in sixth grade you'd get like the Alla Popcorn t-shirt, and then like
Yes.
two cool friends would get the Alla Popcorn t-shirt, and
Yes.
then 10 people get it, and then like the total loser with the net gear and the back brace, then she gets it and you want to burn your Alla Popcorn shirt.
Correct.
It feels like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much.
Here we
Right.
go.
All right.
I mean, do we even need to read it? It's just what it is.
All right. So yeah, so Nicole Shanahan is the latest of this MAGA Maha synthesis, whatever, to become baptized.
There was the piece that I felt was worth sharing was when her hot boyfriend found out she was doing this. When my partner Jacob heard I was getting baptized, he didn't hesitate. I went in, I want to be baptized too. And I smiled and said, great, we'll both be Jews for Jesus. I'm glad he put a lot of deep contemplative thought into converting his religion.
Right. Well,
It's like I'm having a cracker. Oh, I'll have a cracker too. That's what it is at this point.
like, well, it's kind of like, remember when you were a teenager and like some of your friends first started like smoking pot or dropping acid or whatever, and at first there was like a lot of like hesitation and like, I don't know, man, can you believe this person's doing this? I don't know about that, right? Like this, that, and the other thing. And then at a certain point, everyone's just like, you know what I mean? And it feels like that with this sort of baptism Christian op right now, that like, everybody's in that space where like, if I don't join in now, I'm going to miss out on all the fun because all the cool kids are doing it. And I don't want to be the last one.
It's such a formulaic trend, but what I find so weird and offensive about it is I think it's a big deal. If this is real, like I hear Adam Curry talk about it, I know. And that is what it is, but it's real to him. He is a legit born again who like lives and breathes the Bible, and it's like totally encompassed his life. For these people, it's just like deciding I'm going to wear a pink shirt today instead of a green shirt today. It's like
Right.
so flippant and shallow, and it's just optics. It's so lame.
But I think it's just that Adam got to it first. Like he recognized where things were going. And so he does this with everything. He's a thought leader. He was on MTV. He invented podcasting. He found Jesus first or second at least, or whatever it is, right? And by the time everyone starts jumping in, you don't even have to ask questions of yourself anymore because isn't it obvious, right? Like this is, better do it, but you don't want to miss out. But what did Mickey say to you? Like, don't you want to be part of like saving the world or changing the future or something like that? Like that was gonna I don't think it ever crossed his mind that that wouldn't be the thing that
To me at
pulls
this
you
point,
into the boat.
it's the same as the people posting pictures of themselves getting the lollipop.
Right.
It's like, would you do it if you couldn't post about it on social media?
Right. That's the thing is like, and again, if there is this person out there, we wouldn't know because they wouldn't post it, right? But like, if this was happening behind the scenes and there was none of this happening on social media, and I was just finding out by like running into someone that like I hadn't seen in a long time because they had disappeared from the interwebs, and it's like, what are you doing? And they told me this, and they were like, yeah, but I'm not talking about it. It's just something I'm exploring on my own, and blah blah. I would have some respect for that. But like if this I just question how real any of this can be when like it becomes imperative to have like the longest Twitter post ever about it.
No, I mean, obviously nothing about it is real. And you and we started talking about this like 3 years ago now. We've been
Right.
talking about this for a while. But is there a larger play around it that we're missing? I mean, we did I know we played a clip like maybe a month or so ago, someone talking about it, that like these are the people who are bringing in Armageddon. So they're pretending it's some religious thing to help rationalize whatever moves
Well,
and
the
fall.
Bible is one of the fucktards' favorite scripts to play out.
Yep.
There's an element of like barefoot buckskin cosplay at, at work here, but I think there's like levels and layers to this, right? It's a morale gathering exercise to march people in a specific political direction because people will become okay with certain things if there's like a religious bent to it that they wouldn't be okay with just from a strictly empirical like empire building or governmental sort of thing, i.e. like what's going on in Gaza or whatever it is, right? If there's some biblical story that rationalizes it, then they don't have to be anti it anymore. They can just kind of go along with it, not love it maybe, because I don't know. So there's that. But I also think that there's like, you know, without going to like sort of either end of this, right? Like I see how like debating the Bible and religious texts become very popular online, right? There's all of these sort of like, Christian scholars that are having their moment. And then you have like the controversy brought forward by Almond Hillman, and I don't have the knowledge about these things to say whether he's right or whether he's wrong.
What is his controversy? Jesus didn't exist?
No, that Jesus was, caught in a garden with a little boy, like with a naked little boy in the middle of the night that had a bandage on his private parts. And, when confronted, Jesus was like, I'm not a lay stace, and a lay stace is a child trafficker, but he's there with a naked little boy who's got bandages on his private parts, right? Um, and so I could not, there's no way I could say whether that is true or that is not true. But we live in such a fucking strange reality that it would not surprise me at all. And things have been so inverted, right? That the thing that people are like praying to and believing in could be something as sort of depraved as that. Right. So I'm not saying that that's what it is. I'm being very, very, very clear. I am no religious scholar. I have never read the Bible. Those things are not of that much interest to me, other than as certain things about them relate to other topics that I'm interested in. And I'm not really so concerned with what anyone believes, as long as like they can believe what they believe. I believe what I believe. I don't have to believe anything if I don't want to, right? Like whatever it is. But obviously there's been so much conversation about all of this that like, you can't sort of pretend you're not hearing that these conversations are going on. So I think that like there is some, I don't know which side, and I don't think it's as easy as sides because we know about like thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and like you could push each in its opposite. Like, I don't know which side the elite or the controllers or the whatever we're calling the people who like seem to be acting against humans interest outside of the view of whatever. I'm not sure which version they like. Right, or they just like playing the things off of each other and creating outrage and resistance and all of this kind of stuff. And then there's this other thing where you know whatever these scenarios are that go on where like famous people are into weird stuff, and whether there's like any truth to those operations or they're all fake or they're all some like I don't know, whatever it is, you can see sometimes the panic on some of these people's faces when they think that something about themselves that they didn't really want everyone to know might be about to be revealed. And when you're in that space where you feel like you might lose everything, you might lose your career, you might lose your money, you might lose your family and friends or whatever it is, there's this like tendency to look for grace and saving, being saved or being helped or rescued or having a new group of people to go to when you get rejected by everyone else that could make and that's one of the things is like with religion or Christianity, if a person is willing to repent and convert or whatever, they kind of get acceptance without having to explain much, right? So that's
Right.
appealing to some of these people. So I have no idea what we're looking at, and I would be way out of my depth to say that I did, right? But it is like bizarre to me. What is happening is like it just makes it's too convenient timing wise with like what is going on with data collection and artificial intelligence and surveillance and whatever it is, that like at the moment where it's probably more clear than ever that there's no privacy, everybody suddenly feels the need to find Jesus.
Oh, interesting. So you think it's like a get out of everything and anything and everything free card.
Whether it's external, like in the case like someone like Russell Brand, where it's like there probably are a group of people placing certain pressures on him, but then offering him an out, or whether it's just within your own self that like you have things that you've done that you feel uncomfortable with or guilty for, and just the idea that other people might find them out or know about them makes you feel like you need to change yourself somehow without like really coming to terms with just being honest about what happened.
But Jews have that too. And Shanahan, I didn't know she was a Jew. She certainly, I mean, I thought she was a Chinese communist. I don't know.
And
But
that too. And that too,
I'm
right?
not, I mean, I appreciate your perspective because it hints at some sort of authenticity to this. I feel like it's some sort of initiation
Sure,
into
sure.
the Lifeboat Foundation, or it could also be like setting up for the impending synthesis. So
Right.
as we have this fake divide that everyone who believes these things are all religious freaks. But I see it as either like a longer game synthesis that has yet to present itself, an initiation. It just feels fake as fuck.
Well,
Like
I think, well, I think there's all that too. Like, I don't think that one thing means the other isn't happening,
right,
right? But I think that like it's not the exact same thing happening for everyone. It's just all being clumped together. So a lot of people are doing what you're saying. A few are doing what I'm saying. Some are just watching this whole thing and saying, I want in on it too. And so like
right,
there's not one reason or the other. They're just doing the current thing,
right,
right? But the only reason that makes me feel like there's something to this, and when I say that is organic, I don't mean that these people really deeply have found Jesus in their heart. I
right.
say organic in terms of people feeling like something with inside themselves, like, oh, I better do this now because otherwise I'm fucked, right? Because of the timing of the way things is going, like with technology and shifts in politics and media and things like that, that there's people out there that feels like that like they feel like I better cover my butt and I better do it now. And whether that is a spiritual cover my butt or like a like try to play nice with these guys so they don't show the evidence, cover my butt or whatever it is. There's a lot of this, if you are really doing something from an organic place, there's no rush to do it now. There is like, let me contemplate this for a bit. Let me like learn some things and then like make my decision. And then I can sort of feel it out for a while and feel if this feels right. And once I'm certain this is who I am, then maybe I can say something about it. But this rush to like put a sticker on it feels frantic to me and embarrassing. Both.
Correct. It's frantic, it's embarrassing, and it's just like I said, it's such a formula at this point of the people who are doing it. Like I'm thinking before this time, how many people in my life do I know who became born again Christians? If I could think of any, it would be on one hand. In the past year,
right?
It's cuckoo.
Right. Yeah. Right. But think about that. Think about like, we have this like impending AI scenario, right? That sort of matches up with the kinds of narratives you hear about like end times and you better get saved now. And, it feels very dramatic to me, but it's like, there's a lot going on. But yes, I agree with you, right? Like I've had like only a couple of people I know, actually most of the people I know who have gone from either not being religious to being religious, or from being like one, like sort of attached to a religion based on how they were raised, and then finding their own version of religion themselves as an older person. Most of them have become Catholic, not born again Christians. I don't know too many people in my regular life. This is mostly like an online thing that I sort of see. Like I know plenty of people who are evangelical Christians, but they kind of always have been, right? But the interesting later in life conversions in my personal reality have been more people going towards Catholicism. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting, and with some people, like it's obvious. Like I just can't stop thinking of Russell Dobular talking about the half dozen eggs that Russell Brand's had, right?
Totally.
I don't really know what this is. Like, I mean, I know it's like fake and gay for sure, but like, I'm not sure like which flavor of fake and gay that it is. And that doesn't mean that real people can't have an actual sort of enlightenment or awakening or conversion or whatever. But when they do, they don't do this. They're not making it like a Twitter thing.
Correct. They're not doing this. I mean, my sense is it's whatever false flag is coming next that has to do with like how they're going to rationalize why we all need digital enslavement, AI, right, whatnot. It's going to feed into that.
Yes, for sure.
Whatever it is.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I can see how it's like, this isn't the real mark of the beast. This is the good one. Kind of like there was the bad lollipop, but there's going to be a good lollipop. Correct. So I see that narrative coming forth that like, no, this is the good mark of the beast. Right?
Totally. Like Russell Brand telling us why we needed to change scripture like less than 3 months after he became born again.
Right.
It's going to have to do with that, with like these people telling us why enslavement, set up X is good for us.
Right.
And they're authorized to tell us because they're Christians.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I only watched about 30 or 40 minutes of the Adam Curry interview, because when he started doing the God stuff to Joe, you heard him. He was like trying to invite him into, but I had to turn it off. But the most interesting thing, as someone who has followed him for a number of years, was this: suddenly he has his hearing back after getting his teeth cleaned.
Well, you know what? I tracked that in real time.
Yeah.
How that happened when he was having a lot of gum.
Right. I remember. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, he had major surgery. And and that's also when he found Jesus and stopped smoking pot.
Well, I think it's awesome that I also, as a person who've had a lot of issues with my mouth, and noticed that like once I got them fixed, I didn't get sinus infections anymore and things like that. Right. So I'm not discounting that. That's awesome. And that's amazing. But it's like strange to me for someone who like that he hadn't had that checked out before.
Got it.
right? Like it just seemed like it seems to me like if I had allergies and I couldn't hear, I'd have been to an ear, nose, and throat doctor or to some sort of like dental person that would look x-ray right here and see, right? So that part was strange, but I'm glad he got it sorted out. That was the most interesting part to me.
Hmm. Yeah, there was nothing really revelatory. I feel like it was just a show.
So what I did is I scrolled through the like chapters, right? And I knew instinctively that he was there to pivot the Mike Benz narrative just a little bit. And of course, I didn't get to that part in the interview, but I saw it in the chapters that like three-quarters the way through the show, there was a section on Mike Benz, right?
That's a really interesting point because I think you and I talked about Adam being suspicious of Mike Benz, and he had this whole thing of like, well, he never talks about propaganda and he never talks about Smith Munn, and that's really suspicious. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, that didn't seem suspicious. So that makes sense. And it also ties in Adam's conversion because on some level, it has me thinking he's playing ball in some aspects.
I mean, I think he's been playing ball on some level a lot all along. And
Correct.
again, this does not mean that nobody should ever have any suspicion of Mike Benz, but I've been observing Mike Benz a lot over the last couple of months. And this is a person who's very careful about what ideas he signs on with and what ones he doesn't. He's very clear about like, this is what I'm focused on. But while I was looking at this, I noticed this. I don't really have an opinion about it, but he's very careful. I was watching him on Patrick, I got it right this time. Patrick Bet David the other day with some young Brazilian kid, and they were talking what's going on in Brazil there. And he was really specific to say, like, I wanted to do this with you, but I'm not here to tell you what you should do or what is good or what is bad or what the right course of action is. That is not my lane. This is my lane. Right. And I have heard Mike Benz talk about Smith Mundt and things like that. Right. But, I think and as one of my clips that I have today is also going to show, like there are people vying to co-opt and divert the Mike Benz narrative off into a variety of other things. And I'm not saying Mike Benz is, the second coming of Jesus and that he's perfect or that I don't know what this is, right? But I'm noticing that there is something slightly different about him than these usual characters that come forward. And maybe it is just that he has spent so much time working on this that like, for whatever reason he's doing it, he is not wanting it to be co-opted by other people's narratives. And so he's just staying very focused on his lane, whatever you think of his lane. But I thought it was interesting that we had Mike Benz followed by Adam Curry, followed by Mike Baker,
Yep.
right? And I feel like we've seen these patterns before. I think maybe even the exact order, like after an Abby Martin visit once or something like that, right?
Oh,
Somebody comes on and is just slightly outside of like the accepted MMA bros, oligarchy narrative or whatever it is, right? Um,
Broligarchy. I like that.
yeah. So, so I've just been kind of observing that. Um,
Well, so one thing to that is, and I'm sure we all agree that this USAID, all the Doge thing, it's a giant freaking distraction. And it's not to
totally.
say that they're not doing good work. And you and I were talking about this just before we hit record, where you were saying you don't necessarily think Trump was the lesser of two evils and there was any difference in the administrations. And what I noticed mostly in the news as I've come back is like, oh no, these tech oligarchs are setting up an enslavement system and they have too much power and they're too close to Trump. That would have happened on the left as well. You
Sure.
and I, and
100%.
we've been talking about this the whole time where like I do think it mattered and it made a difference because I'm happy there isn't this like DEI shit and all this waste and what's happening with the border. Like I do see benefits to Trump, but this is a big giant problem. And that's what I've seen most, at least in the alt media this past week, is like realizing that this is a problem. And all this Doge USAID thing is just like a front.
Yeah. I mean, to be clear, like, I don't think the other side would have been better. So, right. Like, for me, like, I've been outside of the belief in politics paradigm for a really long time. I understand that, like, in 2016, for a lot of people who had started looking at this stuff a lot later than I had, that I could see from their perspective what the appeal or the hope in Trump was, right? Here, 8 years later, that some people still have that belief, that hope, and that desire to like look at it through rose-colored glasses or to give the benefit of the doubt or whatever. It would just be another flavor of bad. If it was Kamala Harris, it would be like technocracy, DEI technocracy, as opposed to like complete and total like data surveillance. It would just be some different flavor of bad, right?
But I think it still would have been data surveillance because all the fucktards who funded Trump were also funding the
100%.
other side. So we
would
still
look
would have
different.
had that.
It
Yeah,
would
it would
have
have
looked
looked
different.
different.
Yeah, it would have looked
Yeah.
different, and
And it would have come in under like, Jew measles or, versus like the economic crash that I don't see anyone in the alt media talking about that's happening, which has me thinking that they're going to bring in the enslavement blob much sooner than I had been hoping.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. Like, he's brought forward so many gross things with so many gross people so quickly, and I don't think all the gross things with all the gross people. I think there's going to be a lot of people moved out of the way, and like there's going to be one sort of more dominant path, right? I don't know if it's going to be the Ellison path, the Teal path, the Musk path, because they're all sort of connected, but like it's like depending on which one is leading the pack, like the flavor of the punch is going to be slightly different,
Correct.
right? It's like, when you go to a good high-end mixology bar, right? Like, even with the classic cocktails, that you're going to have a slight spin put on it by whoever's mixing the drink, and it's going to be a little different than if this person did it or if this person did it. So, like we were at Dumont's down low the other day, right? And we had a drink that I love. It's one of my favorite drinks. It's called the Ultimate Palabra, right? The Ultima Palabra, the last word, right? It's like the traditional drink is with gin, but the Ultima Palabra, Spanish version, is with mezcal instead. And generally, this is a kind of drink that's referred to as an equal parts drink, which means that all the ingredients are in the cocktail in equal parts, right?
Yep.
And so in a last word or an ultima palabra, you have mezcal or gin, depending on which one you're having, and then you have lime juice, maraschino liqueur, which is a Luxardo liqueur, and green chartreuse, and it's like 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, 3/4, right? It's a great drink. But this was the best one I've ever had. And it was clear to me that this was not in equal parts, that this bartender, it seemed to me like it was, probably like a third to half mezcal and then dividing the rest of the space between the other three ingredients, which I like a less sweet drink. I like a more I like to taste the smokiness of the mezcal or whatever it is, right? So depending on who's mixing the cocktail of tyranny, we're going to have different flavors coming forward.
Okay, and I love your metaphor, and I also love that you mentioned mezcal because it's the only thing I drink. The one through line we'll have with all the flavors is South Africa.
All right. For sure. Yeah.
South Africa is going to be represented regardless. And Derek Bros spoke on Redacted, and I didn't bring the clip. And you might have known this, that there was a private dinner at David Sachs's house before the election with Ellison and all the guys who raised all this money, which is what concerns me as far as like Trump not being sovereign because of all this tech oligarch money that put him into office.
I'm going to show you, I don't know, I have a lot of ideas as to why the South Africa scenario, right? Why all of these people, but there's something that I've had my eye on in South Africa for a long time. It's come up in numerous Project Kids and glass bead games and dumps and things like that. But there's a land anomaly in South Africa. To me, it feels like it has to do with this.
Oh.
Okay, I've been looking at this for 4 or 5 years now, right? And this is apparently a bird reserve or something like that, right? It's just outside of Cape Town. I've been to Muizenberg. I don't think we went to this. I've been here, Muizenberg, right? But right there. Muizenberg is like, you often see the famous little painted houses on the beach. That's in Cape Town, South Africa. That's Muizenberg, right? But what kind of portal to what dimension is this?
Yeah,
Right?
totally, totally.
And all of their parents were like in mining in South
Yep,
Africa,
yep,
right? Also, the like most famous South African, of course, is Nelson Mandela,
yep.
right? And he was kept in Robben Island, which is a limestone quarry, right? Limestone is like what the area in Austin around here is, and what's under the ground here. So, what are these like transcendent or transitional properties of limestone and whatever? Like, what were the mines? What were the quarries? What were they? I'm sure they were in rare earth minerals or fine gems or whatever it is, but like it has as much to do with the land itself as it does the history of the behavior of the people and all of the racial stuff and whatever it is. But like when I look at this, I'm like, there's something going on here that is like it's like a portal to another dimension masquerading as a bird reserve or something like this, right? I don't know what
And
this
not
is.
very well. It's not
And
masquerading very well. It's pretty obvious.
right, but like no one ever talks about it,
Of
right? Like
course.
it's small. You wouldn't see it unless I knew exactly where to zoom in and show you because it's come up, right? Look how small, like it's just you wouldn't think it's there. You can't see it, from on the map when you look at it like that, right? So anywho, all right, shall we jump into the clips?
Let's jump into the clips.
All right, I have four clips. I have four clips and a post, like a community post thing on YouTube.
I
Where would you like to start?
I did also pull up the Eric Weinstein thing if we want to.
Oh, I have two Eric Weinstein clips. One was that
Okay.
the one you were requesting that multiple people sent us of James
Oh,
True breaking it down, and he did a wonderful. It's a really good analysis. So we're gonna play some of that. Then I also have what I had thought you were referring to until I watched it, which was this other Eric Weinstein on Piers Morgan
okay.
that got into some interesting stuff. So I have those two. I have Brianna and Alan McLeod talking. Their videos mostly about like Elon Musk, but I pulled the portion about Tulsi because again, it's like people finally kind of coming around to like all of the things, but still not completely recognizing that like the driver of all of this is the cult. Like everyone still thinks it's the like power hungry, wanting all that kind of stuff, right? Like how is it that like the one item that she has never changed her stance on is like the primary belief of the cult,
Well,
right?
no, she did distance herself and say that she has no affiliation with them whatsoever.
But her top foreign policy priority is still the thing that is like the most deeply held belief of the cult. and,
Of
and
course.
and like all these people, they're all that we're finding, they're in different neo-theosophical cults, but they're all part of neo-theosophical cults, and now they're all in charge of government, right?
Totally.
So I have those, and then I have a Steve Bannon clip for you. That maybe isn't too flattering, so I might have to break your heart. But
Ooh, it's not
uh,
possible. He can do no wrong.
uh
I know he's a rabid Zionist. Let's start with Eric.
all right, let's start with Eric. Okay, so I'm gonna go first with the clip that I had found on my own. And then we'll go to the clip that all right, here we go. Let me just make sure I have this right because something has changed since I put it here. Like I had the transcript up and the transcript seems to have closed itself. So I want to make sure that I'm starting it where I wanted to start it. Okay. Okay. Um, hmm. I'm trying to decide if I want to just play the whole video.
How
Uh,
long is it?
7 minutes and 48 seconds.
I defer to your
Um,
discernment.
uh, yeah, I think it's just such a good example of like they're whipping him out right now,
They're
right?
definitely whipping him out.
So let's just watch this whole section here. Okay, sorry for the long video, guys, but all right, here we go.
Fair use.
Fair use.
Trump has faced at least 2 assassination attempts, and my guess is that that number is not 2. And in particular, I would say that Elon had a son who I think he believes was targeted by this transgender movement, attempting to induce people to reproductively mutilate themselves and terminate their line. In this situation, I would say that both Elon and Trump feel that they have been joined in a physical.
It wasn't that long ago that Eric was defending trans in some, I don't remember if it was with Chris or with one of those, but that's a flip-flop for him.
Oh, there's all kinds of shit in here. Just wait and see. This is a very, this is a chock full 7.5 minutes.
Okay.
Hybrid war, and they are now returning fire. So the question is, what is it that Elon is trying to preserve? When you had an actual civil war in the US, were both sides trying to preserve the infrastructure of the country that they hope to rule over at the end? This is what I don't know. I don't know, and Mike Benz and I are actually quite close together on this. We've both.
So here we go. You see him connecting himself to Mike Benz, right? Like,
of course, he always does that. He's like a barnacle on every media wave.
Right. Look, listen to where he goes with it, though.
Both been praying for the day that we could actually clean house with this.
I believe.
Oh my God! Like they're a team.
I believe that Mike Benz has been praying for a day where he could clean house. I have no belief at all that Eric prays for anything other than as much attention and as many houses as he can get.
Correct.
Terribly frightening architecture that grew up in the CIA State Department nexus. But Mike has compared this to performing open heart surgery, and you're trying to protect the patient from both, let's say, a spread of cancer while they're on the operating table, but also a surgeon that appears to be very cavalier about risk mitigation. I cannot believe that in some sense, Elon and Trump are not surrounding themselves with more strong voices, given how much is on the line. We're not taking over Twitter here. Twitter never had a thermonuclear deterrent.
Right. I mean, you said an interesting thing about a possible link between the Trump golf club assassination attempt by a guy called Ryan Ruth. You said Ryan Wesley Ruth and USAID are both strongly tied to discrete American interests, assets, sources, and methods in Ukraine. Who was paying Ruth in Ukraine, Afghanistan, etc.? Is there no connection whatsoever? I mean, to which I would say a very legitimate question, simply because we know so little, actually, about either of these people that wanted to kill Trump. Because, a party, I would say, is what you've just said, that the very liberal skewed mainstream media moved on incredibly quickly. I mean, if there had been 2 assassination attempts on a Democrat running for president, one of which hit him, and then within weeks, there's another attempt that is very, very close to being successful, 4 minutes away from killing Trump. And we know so little about the killers or the attempted killers. It would be a staggering state of affairs, and the media would have carried on and on and on. But they just dropped it. I mean, the first one in particular, Ruth, obviously, we know a little bit more about, and those connections to Ukraine are intriguing. But the young kid that shot.
No.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get.
Yeah, literally nothing seems to exist about this kid, and we've all just accepted it.
People I know in the intelligence community talk about the use of patsies to.
Why does he know so many people in the intelligence community? I thought he was a physicist. I thought he was a financial guy for Peter Thiel.
Right. Yep.
Commit crimes. They talk about pre-planting cover stories in mainstream publications. As soon as I heard that, I immediately went to the New York Times search engine to find that I think in 2023 there was an article about weirdos in Ukraine who would never be allowed near the front lines of an American war, in which Roth is featured, which is consistent both with him being a complete lunatic and also pre-planting a cover story in Allied media. You have to recall that when World War II was going on, the New York Times had a paid journalist from the government to write the atomic weapons pieces. So the reporter was actually paid by the government to do its bidding.
Pause.
J. Edgar Hoover.
Another Weinstein teaching us about propaganda and Operation Mockingbird. They're both doing the same thing right now.
Yep.
Used Joyce Haber at the Los Angeles Times to destroy Gene Seberg. There is a long tradition of using media confederated to the U.S. deep state to accomplish things with no trace. And in part, you have to remember that the idea of the CIA is intelligence is what they say, but if it was called the COA, the Covert Operations Agency, you'd know that the word covert means deniable. Deniable means gaslighting. It is the only organization that is chartered to gaslight should its activities become discovered. And that is why there's so much pressure never to even ask a question, what was a lunatic like Ryan Routh doing in Ukraine? Who was paying?
That's why he's gaslighting us right now.
I was just going to
the same organization he's alleging to throw down the river.
Correct. Right.
Him. Why was he trying to get fighters?
Just their existence. The Weinstein brothers' existence is a gaslight.
Is gaslighting, totally.
From Afghanistan to the front lines in Ukraine. This is a very strange sort of hobby for a former construction worker.
Where is the line in terms of transparency?
But why isn't it a strange hobby for a supposed physicist and financial person to constantly be inserting themselves in like the Epstein thing and in all that, right? Like, I don't know.
Exactly. And here's my other question. Why would Piers's producers allow Eric on screen with half of the top of his screen obscured?
Right.
There must be some things which even you would think should remain secret, right, as far as US government information. You know, when I remember what happened with Edward Snowden, WikiLeaks, Julian Assange, and so on, when you put all those guys together and you see the attack on them was that they were revealing stuff that was not in America's national interest. Others defended them saying, no, we need to be as transparent as possible. But clearly there's a line between those two positions. You know, you don't want to put the details of every single CIA operative around the world because they'll get killed, for example. So there is clearly a line, but
we're in great.
Well, where is that line? I mean, in terms of what Trump and Elon Musk are doing now, there's something incredibly energetic and refreshing about what they're doing in lifting the lid off all this stuff. And they're going to do it apparently department by department and even down to the JFK files and what the government knows about UFOs and so on and so on. But there's got to be a line, isn't there? I mean, you can't just Edward Snowden it, WikiLeaks it, where everything goes out.
They will find out that when they've screwed up really badly. At some point, they're going to do something like end up releasing a lot of sources and methods using this showmanship that they do better than anyone else on Earth. And the concern that I have is that those of us who've been fighting this battle for, like, I don't know, in my case, 35 to 40 years.
Those of us who have been fighting this battle for 35 to 40 years.
Before we even get to that, the setup of Piers asking him the question that he has been saying publicly for years, we need better lies.
Yes,
and Piers has obviously been tasked with saying that as though it's his idea, and then he doesn't even answer the question.
Correct. Right? Correct. I have to say this, and I'm not going to bore the audience by going back and listening, but while Pierce was talking, I heard very quietly another voice talking, almost like I could hear what was being said to Eric in his earpiece from his handler that he was supposed to say next. Now, I don't know what, but like, did you hear what I'm talking about?
No, but I really want you to go back now.
Like, I don't want to go back and then have it not be there and look crazy. I don't hear anything now. I didn't hear that before. But right when Pierce was setting up the part that you were saying, I swear to God, I heard a woman's voice very, very quietly saying something. So when we are done with this show or tomorrow or something, I'm going to go back and see if I can hear it again. And if I can hear it again, I'm going to clip it and see if I can raise the volume and see if we can find something in there, because I think I heard something. All right, continuing. Okay. I'm going to go back a few seconds because I want to hear it. Okay, here we go.
The concern that I have is that those of us who've been fighting this battle for, like, I don't know, in my case, 35 to 40 years against this thing are nowhere to be found. We're looking at a bunch of people who...
Nowhere to be found? You're on Piers Morgan.
Look at this. What is this?
He just wants to be Trump's little earpiece. He and Brett both just want to be like little parrots on Trump's shoulders.
They're afraid that they are already old news. They rescued the Republic and they have been replaced by newer, trendier, more converted to Christianity kids already.
They need to go get baptized.
Crossed over.
Let's rewind this 1 second. Listen to what he's saying. He's afraid that he's going to be irrelevant.
For, like, I don't know, in my case, 35 to 40 years against this thing are nowhere to be found. We're looking at a bunch of people who have crossed over relatively recently to being okay with this whole structure. I mean, I hate to say it this way, but if you look at like Mark Zuckerberg and you know, the board of Facebook, they were participating in this thing until they switched teams.
They still
so
are.
in part, those of us who've been looking at this for a long time know the dangers of disclosure. And we've always worried, like, we need to get at the cancer, but we can't risk pretending that, oh...
Can't have free speech. We need selected speech thought leaders like me and my brother.
Correct.
You know, sunlight is the best disinfectant. First of all, any moron who always says sunlight is the best disinfectant doesn't understand that something like brucella gets worse in sunlight. There are infections that actually get much worse in sunlight.
Yes, there are exceptions, but as someone who just took a water safety class, sunshine does make an excellent disinfectant, Eric.
Right.
And so, you know, the problem is that you've got this very simplistic point of view. And if you don't subscribe to the simplistic point of view, either of the first group, which said that this is all normal, there is no conspiracy, or the second, which is let's just destroy the whole thing and take the whole thing out. Let's saw off the tree limb upon which we sit. Neither of those is the right course.
Is he funded
I'm
by
exhilarated
USAID?
by getting rid of the rot. I think
that's why your nerves fail and your
what
feet
happened?
start
How
burning.
did I?
Did you know that
How did I
neuropathy is
switch
a completely
videos? That was an
reversible
accident.
condition?
Wait, what happened?
Well, yeah, there have
How do
been
I go
calls.
back?
You click that arrow.
Okay.
Trump has faced at least
All right,
two
go
assassination
over
attempts
here. Hold on.
for a long time. Point of view. And if you don't subscribe to the simplistic point of view, either of the first...
He's clearly upset that he's losing some USAID funding. So is that just from his CIA gig, or do you think there are other projects and departments that's funding that have his panties?
Well, what's interesting is there was like, I didn't have a chance to go back and grab it, but in Revolver this week, there was an article saying like, don't trust Jeffrey Sachs because he was one of the people who orchestrated the plan for like the immigrant invasion through the southern border.
Okay.
Right? And like, well, Jeffrey Sachs says lots of things that we might agree with. We've been suspicious based on his climate narrative, on some of his other things. So like that story came out this week. And then there's also this story where he's like been friends with the Hungarian prime minister guy for like 30 or 40 years and always knew he was going to be a star. It's like, what? What? That guy is anti-immigration. So you're both buddies with him and then promoting the whole thing. But it's like what the Canadian Patriot people who found the paper that Johnny Vedmore found the paper that he wrote that was basically encouraging that they do this migrant crisis and disenfranchise American workers and whatever it is, right? So, yes, I think you're right.
Okay.
Well, that's it. Like that would be it. Those were his projects.
Totally.
Right? That gig is up.
Right.
Right? So he's auditioning for a new one right now.
Right.
Group, which said that this is all normal, there is no conspiracy, or the second, which is let's just destroy the whole thing and take the whole thing out. Let's saw off the tree limb upon which we sit. Neither of those is the right course, and I'm exhilarated by getting rid of the rot. I think that they're going to do a great job, and I'm never going to stop rooting for them to succeed. But my God, do they even understand what they're looking at? I don't know.
And
no,
you do.
Only you can.
Only you, Eric, right?
Only Eric.
All right, so let's just move right along to the next Eric Weinstein clip. James True here offered a fascinating analysis of something that kind of goes along with what we've been pointing at when we look at people who are talking about Jeffrey Epstein, if you're looking at the sex, you're definitely not looking at the right place. If you're looking at the money, it's still not quite the right thing. There's something entirely else going on here. This is the other side of that argument as well. And that all of this is like inserted, right? Like this is the amount of, can you imagine the amount of words in newspapers and spoken on media that have been taken up talking about Jeffrey Epstein? And like, what could people, like, think about how many videos every day for the last 10 years have been produced about Jeffrey Epstein. And like, with all of those hours back, what could somebody do with their lives?
Oh, for sure. And obviously, I do want to shout out to Ashley and Kim Rose, who both sent us
the clip.
Thank you so much. But how, like, they're obviously seeding the groundwork for the alleged sharing of the Epstein client list, which may or may not be happening. But I'm just curious, in the clips that he's about to show, like, on what grounds is Eric Weinstein the expert in this? I mean, we know he has a bajillion conflicting stories about his relationship with him. But again, I thought he was a physics nerd, and I thought he was like CFO of, was it Teal Capital?
But it's kind of like Brett being an expert on propaganda because he's an evolutionary biologist. It's the same thing.
It's so annoying. Okay.
Fingers. Are we ever going to get to the show, James? I don't know. I don't even know why I said that. You know, they're probably like, man, fuck this guy. I don't want to hear that. And that's fine too. Sorry. I just showed you a 2-minute clip of one Steen talking about another Steen, Brett Weinstein.
I love that he called Eric Brett. I love that he called Eric Brett.
The news for some reason, discussing the parables of Jeffrey Epstein. And they're arguing with Dershowitz, this famous another one of those guys, right? Also, and they're arguing. You just heard them argue about whether or not Epstein works for Mossad. And I played you that clip because I wanted to be able to show you how beautifully this system works, how perfectly this system works. When I go home to see my dad, love that guy. Absolutely just a joy hanging out with him. And he likes primetime news. He tends to watch primetime news. And because he tends to watch primetime news, I'm not like, hey, you have to change that. I'm not like, hey, that's not art, right? I'm not like, hey, that's not entertainment. You can't do that, you know? All those things. You
Here's a delicious looking apple, right?
Come on. I like the way he's setting the story up. That's why I'm playing this part.
Yeah,
and he likes primetime news. He tends to watch primetime news. And because he tends to watch primetime news, I'm not like, hey, you have to change that. I'm not like, hey, that's not art, right? I'm not like, hey, that's not entertainment. You can't do that, you know? All those things. I want to hang out with my dad. And it's easy. And I hang out with my dad even though the news is on. And I have to learn how to enjoy the news because I want to enjoy my dad. I'm not going to tell my dad. I have tried to get my dad to watch other things, but why? What's the point? I don't need that. There's something to be seen. There's more depth in the room. And these guys are showing it to you, which is why I just really wanted to show it to you too. So the video you just watched has 4 talking heads. You only heard 2 of them, but that's okay. But 2 or 3 talking heads, but all 4 of them, if you were listening to the entire interview, can be placed into one of 4 things. And they're on the screen right now. The first one is the host, and he's asking, is Epstein Mossad? The second one, we don't actually get to hear her talk, but you can tell she's very serious, and she's really got something to say about this too. And what she has to say, if you were to listen further, was that there are possible ties between Epstein and Mossad. And then on the third head, you have a Epstein is not Mossad. It's a hardcore, this is how I feel because this is what I know. And then in the fourth head is Epstein is Mossad. And it's a hard head. It's very firm. It's like, this is what I believe. This is what I know. And all four of those are different nodes. They are different branches. But all four of those branches, it might be difficult to see or to notice that all four of those branches are actually part of the same cowboy. They are underneath the same node. They are underneath the same branch, the same tree. Epstein is true. Epstein is organic. Epstein is unquestionable. That root statement is being expressed subcutaneously by these four talking heads. Is Epstein Mossad? That means Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. There are possible ties between Epstein and Mossad. That means Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. Epstein is not Mossad. Definitely says Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. Epstein is Mossad. Still proves the fact that Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. Do you understand? Can you see? This is one singular thought being brought to you by four separate fingers. One hand, hidden, four fingers. The cowboy is not in the room. At no point are you going to see the cowboy's face. You are going to see the eyes of the crazy Australian Shepherd dog. One Australian Shepherd says, is Epstein Mossad? Another Australian Shepherd says there are possible ties between Epstein and Mossad. Another Australian Shepherd said Epstein is not Mossad. Another Australian Shepherd says Epstein is Mossad. All of them are pushing you through the idea, the corral of Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. You will never, ever be able to get past this. You will never be able to see the cowboy on national TV. So how do you enjoy TV with your dad? It's easy because I need you to embrace believability. I need you to embrace that we have been given a gift from these sacred friends that you and I know as Building 7. From the hollowed Mother Teresa's fingers of Waynell Sexton herself. From the golden coffin of what's his name? Sorry, I can't think of his name. To the birth certificate of Obama, through the 368 names on the Clinton kill list, that all these things have brought to you the ability to see what I just showed you. And at first, when you first see these things, you might be angry and you might go, this sucks and the world is full of lies and it all sucks. And this is good because you're learning to pick up weight. You're learning to pick up weight. First time is hard. You're just like, this shit's heavy. It's not always that way. I want you to have fun. I want you to enjoy the show. And I want you to know that there are other people that have wanted you to enjoy the show too. I think those people were behind Building 7. I don't think you make mistakes at that level. I think it's too easy to get that right. It's too easy to detonate a building because everyone has to be ready. No one does that accidentally early. There's a lot of moving parts to detonating a building. A lot of moving parts to setting off thermite. Whatever it is you want to believe. It's an acoustic, yeah, all that. Yes, all that. Takes a lot of moving parts. These are professionals. We have a fairy tale called The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
Oh, come on. He's on a roll and they're fucking advertising water filters. Come on.
It's a fairy tale. It's not a fable. It's a fairy tale. It's not a fable. It's a fairy tale. A fable teaches you a moral. A fairy tale helps you sleep at night. The Emperor's New Clothes is a fairy tale. It's not a fable. The Emperor knew. The Emperor knew he had no clothes. He knew he wore no clothes, but more importantly, he knew that his kingdom was full of cowards. He knew that his kingdom was chock full. Every single one of them, from the highest generals to the highest truth tellers, were cowards and that they would never tell him. The emperor knew he had clothes because the emperor has a monopoly on praise, and the only way you could keep a monopoly on praise is by noticing things. And by noticing things that other people would not, you would slowly find yourself emperor. An emperor found this so disgusting, he was so disappointed in his people that he started sticking his ass cheeks directly in their face and asking them if they liked his new pants. Who is smarter? Who is in control when you think about this? Because the fairy tale is that the emperor is a fool and everyone in the court is smart. This is the cowboy, and this is why it's a fairy tale, not a fable. We believe that we are smarter than them, which is why they stick Epstein in our face and ask, do you like my new pants? And we do. We love these pants. These are the best pants we've ever seen. We want more. We will place these pants on the New York Times bestseller list. We love this. Give us more, because we will drink from the fountain that the emperor doesn't know, but we do. And when you do the math, how could you be an emperor if you didn't know? Because let's take that. Well, because he was recently fooled. And if he was recently fooled, he would be torn apart. He would be torn apart by other people that want to be the emperor. So the emperors are the ones that know. They know exactly how the court works. They have zero fairy tales that they tell themselves at night. You know why? Because they don't sleep. They're at the top. They are thinking all the time. They are not just one step ahead, because the first time you have one step, you would start to invent propaganda to give you 2 steps ahead. And once you did that, you would double your efforts and turn that propaganda into 4 steps ahead. And pretty soon you would be able to control a media where you're telling people that they're getting the truth because you have 4 different heads telling you 4 different things that seem unique from each other, but in fact are all related to the same idea that Epstein is true, organic, and unquestionable. Epstein didn't publish himself. Epstein didn't publish himself. You know this. It's not easy. Eric Weinstein confirms his lack of sincerity during this very interview. You may have noticed it. Did anyone notice? Did any of you notice that during the 60-second clip that I just played, that Eric Weinstein picked up 3 separate coffee cups? And each of those coffee cups had a different signal. Did anyone else notice? I want to see in the chat. I'm not trying to, I'm just curious. Because if you step away from the reality of what you're expecting to happen, you can see these things, and it gets more fun. It gets more fun. Eric Weinstein doesn't give a shit about the country. Eric Weinstein doesn't give a shit about the intelligence agencies having a breach. Eric Weinstein doesn't give a shit about the victims that Epstein raped and murdered and slaughtered. He doesn't care about the children who had their faces ripped off, or the gold-dipped virgin boys that are suspended above Podesta's place. None of that matters to Weinstein. What matters to Eric Weinstein is he wants attention.
Boom, and we will stop right there.
Word.
Right? Excellent job, James, of storytelling hour and making it land with a punch. I'm glad that Eric is finally getting his due in terms of other people than you and I sort of calling out the nonsensical behavior. But I think that dynamic that James was pointing out is super important. And about 9 months or a year ago, he had this other video that I think ultimately got censored called "We All Live in a Pedo Submarine," that if you can find it anywhere, I recommend everybody go watch, because it deals with sort of, dealing with the same sort of topic from, he tries to find artful and creative ways to get people to observe how they are looking at these things, right? This kind of took me back to that. But yeah, as long as there's an Epstein to talk about, nobody cares about anything that's real.
No, of course not. And they have, I mean, he did just a great job of breaking down how they do it. And I love the flow chart, but did you discern the messaging in the 3 different cups?
I couldn't read what, but like 2 of them were very blurry and one looked like it had some sort of like equation on it or something like that.
I took a screenshot to see if we could blow it up.
Blow it up.
But it's pretty blurry, but we could see the first one at least.
It's
which
like S to the second times D to the something. My guess would be that this is signaling to people out there who know what to look for, right? Like what it is that he's actually doing here, right? On some level, but it also could just be him sticking his naked ass in people's faces and saying, "How do you like my pants?" Right? And my guess is that it's a both and situation.
Yeah, I'm not clear. I mean, part of me is inspired to dig deeper, and part of me feels like, yeah, he's just throwing
That
it.
would just be you sticking your nose further in his ass crack.
But this one is kind of interesting because there's this empty space,
Right.
but there's something on the top.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to waste the time, but
Yeah.
yeah, James did a great job.
James did a great job. And then it also always makes me think back to like, you know, how everyone should know that the entirety of the whole scenario is fake, right? Is that, you know, Bill Barr is the person who like somehow got him his break that got him on this track, supposedly according to the narrative. And Bill Barr was also in charge of the Department of Justice when the prison in New York lost control of him and don't have answers for anything, right? And there's this strange virus that so many people seem to have that causes like every problem under the sun called Epstein Barr virus. And the thing that James just laid out is kind of like the Epstein Barr virus of like the propaganda space, right? Think about what comes from Epstein Barr virus, like herpes and mono and all of these like conditions that people catch and can't ever get rid of. And that's like what this story has done to people's brains.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
All right. I have 2 more clips and a post, but I'm thinking maybe of skipping the thing where Brianna and Alan McLeod just confirm our, you know, previous points about Tulsi Gabbard. I think we've pulled that trick enough times. I'm just going to go to Steve Bannon and then the post that I wanted to show. All right. So here is Deadpan Michael Tracy interviewing Steve Bannon at CPAC.
Oh, I saw this.
And Steve Bannon has just gone scorched earth and given great reasoning why we should just turn around and walk away from Ukraine, even if we like don't ever get our money back or anything like that. It was scorched earth. And then he goes into like full on follow the white rabbit, total Q-tard delusion with his next statement.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay, let them keep the money they stole.
What about this?
But just to get out, that's how adamant I am about it.
What about this notion of the U.S. taking over Gaza? I mean, I've heard it speculated that maybe Trump made that proposal as an opening negotiating gambit, but it doesn't seem like there's very much appetite at all under really any conceivable circumstances for the Arab states to take in 1.8 million Palestinians from Gaza, and for the U.S. to turn Gaza now into like some sort of military protectorate. I know it's not clear if troops would be required or whatever, but you know, I don't remember many people in 2024 during the campaign agitating for the U.S. to take territorial control of Gaza, including people who voted for Donald Trump. So how does that relate to this idea that people had an expectation of Trump reducing foreign entanglements if that idea were to come to full fruition?
I think the basic thesis of America First is exactly what you're saying. We've gotten to a situation around the rim of Eurasian landmass in Western Europe, in the Gulf Emirates, and with Israel, and down Straits of Malacca in the South China Sea, and then back around to South Korea and Japan, that those are 4 nodes of the world where we have huge commercial relationships, trade deals, capital markets, joint capital markets, cultural ties, but it's all underwritten by an American security guarantee. They're all protectorates of the United States. It's the reason that with a NDAA at $900 billion, the Pentagon's back over for another 150.
House Republicans wanted up another $100 billion. Senate Republicans wanted 150, of course.
150. So that's over $1 trillion, where it's really over $1 trillion today. But now they're just saying it straight out. We are not an empire. We are built on a revolutionary idea.
Well, we are, in effect. We may not want to be or not conceptualize ourselves as.
It's not. Our roots are anti-colonialism. We're
until McKinley, who Trump valorized in his inaugural address. Oddly, I guess people forgot about the Philippine War, which is not the prettiest picture.
Spanish-American War. Got picked up some quick ones. So President Trump, America First, is that. On Gaza, I will tell you, I think what President Trump is saying is that we've tried the same thing over and over and over again, and he's not going to fall into that. Now, I believe he's playing 5-dimension chess, 5D chess, right? So I don't.
Could be up to like 75-dimensional
chess. I don't understand it, but I'll tell you, I think he's changed the dialogue already. One thing that people miss, I think this is very important. Bibi came over to do one thing, and that's to get a guarantee of American support for military action into Persia, either the nuclear plant or maybe even some sort of land war. That, my understanding, was barely discussed, and the reason was Trump had his Gaza plan. So if the Gaza idea or the Gaza concept takes everybody off of military action in Persia, which I adamantly am opposed to, and I'm pro-Israel, I think it was a good thing, and I think that's might have been what happened. But other than that, he's playing 5-dimension chess.
He actually used the term, right? Because that has become like such the meme about, people accepting anything that Trump does and saying it's some genius high-level move or whatever it is. But it was just what he said about the Ukraine situation prior to that, and we didn't have time to play the whole thing, was so good. And that was just so stupid.
I mean, I think in reality, it's code for like, he doesn't know why Trump is saying that. I know, like, Trump's thing in the art of the deal is ask for everything up front,
right,
as a means of negotiating. I'm not rationalizing it. I just think it's so over the top ridiculous that it is hard to give credence to the idea, and maybe he is. I don't know. I mean, Bannon always has Trump's back. He's very consistent that way.
It would just be better to say, I don't know why he's doing that. But like, it plays into all of the worst, all of the worst sort of perceptions that people have of like, your rabid, thoughtless Trump follower or whatever it is, right? Yeah. So, okay. And then Dave Rubin made a post today on Facebook, on community post from the ARC. He's at ARC, right? Incredible week at ARC conference in London. Will the West return to its founding principles and offer an inspiring vision for the future? Or will we continue the slow descent into the abyss? The choice is yours. And look who he's with, right? The Joker, as Russ and Keaton call him, right?
Yep.
Right? Not the Joker, they call him the other guy, the guy with the two faces or whatever. And here he is with Douglas Murray, right? I was kind of a little surprised to see Carl Benjamin there, but not completely. And then here we go. We have, what's the guy's name from that band, Winston, whatever. He's been on his show. I think I fucked it up by, let's see, what did I just do? Yeah, you can't see it on this one. On my phone, I can see it. He's with Eric Weinstein, right? And there you go. Big one with Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein's making the rounds this week. Right?
Could use a trainer.
So there was the ARC. They had another ARC conference. And it's just like, could you guys be any more obvious? Like the entirety of they used to do a better job of like pretending that what was happening was like normal and not contrived. And now it's just like, let's be Captain Obvious in every single thing we do.
Totally. I'm just looking up the ARC. I know we went through it once.
Yep.
Who funds it and Legatum Capital. It's just so tiring that people keep buying into this nonsense.
I know. Let's go to the chat room. That's not tiring. There's always fun things to be said and found and whatnot in the chat room. Hi, guys. We've been chatting for a long time, and so I'm just going to take my first look. That's too much to go through. So questions, comments, thoughts, all capital letters, and we'll get to it. But I'm rolling back while I wait for those to roll.
Yes, Verity Hound, I'm definitely looking at Bannon through rose-colored glasses, but if you saw the first half of that video, you would understand why. Was he not a baller in the first half of that video, Emily?
It was like it was whether you agree with what he was saying or not. The conviction with what he was just like scorched earth. Like we just got to go. Like it's like when it's time to leave a relationship. Like there's no more like negotiating or talking or trying to work it out. It's like bye, right?
Yeah.
Like I enjoyed the dynamic of that. Right. All right. Yeah. Thank you, Prosperity. I hope people, I know it's different than the usual flavor of of what I do, but I hope people will go check out that show I did with Vlad Coho. Thank you. Let's see what else.
Oh, thank you guys for your generous super chats. It's so heartwarming to come home to all of your support. Thank you so much.
Jonna did the YMCA lifeguard course. No Outward Bound, though.
These are things I will say, like if our education system actually cared about people and training them for the world, we would all have learned all of these things in elementary school. I feel that was a little spastic. I feel silly that I know none of these things, like how to make a fire or how to build a shelter. Like these are basics that would be wise for all of us to know.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I learned some of these things like in Girl Scout camp when I was little, but then you just forget them, right? And it's like I know less now than I did when I was 6, right? Yes, Gone Squatchin', we've been lied to about history. Drugs were way more prevalent in ancient times. There's nothing new in the world, right? This idea that like drugs are a modern issue. I'm really excited to dig into that in my upcoming stuff. All right, but yeah, did you go to Girl Scout camp or anything like that when you were a kid, Dani?
No, I'm surprised that you did. I only had time for gymnastics camp and I had to get Fritz's
To
permission.
be clear, I did get kicked out of the Girl Scouts. I got kicked
Why? What did you do?
because I was always in gymnastics. Like I didn't my dad let me be in the Girl Scouts and I wanted to be because everyone in my class was doing it and I was already the odd person out because I was the gymnast and didn't have time to play and all that kind of stuff. And so I wanted to do that to try to make friends. I really didn't like it. Like it was not my cup of tea. So if the choice was like going to gymnastics or going to the troop meeting, I would go to gymnastics and eventually they thought I wasn't serious or committed. So they kicked me out. Right. But like, I do remember going to the camps and like learning the little sticks and the fires and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But then it's just like, oh, so we got some super chats.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Jim.
Let's see.
Thank you, Verity Hound.
Yeah. So that Severity Hound is Sophia.
Thank you, Sophia.
And Jim, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Jim.
Let me light your fire. All right, Emily. Ashley. Hi, Ashley. Nice to see you, and thanks for forwarding the clip as well. Cross-reference ancient maps of South Africa to see if that anomaly was mapped. Good idea. It would be interesting to see when that started to appear. Yeah. I will do that. Good idea. Thank you. Let's see. Dani, you and Renee and David were brilliant.
Thank you guys. Yeah. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from the podcast that came out today, which was with a filmmaker, Renee Perez, and David Rodriguez. And it was all about the Hollywood propaganda machine. I think
I was wondering, based on the title, what it was going to be about. Poop has played a role in the narrative, not because of anything coming out of either of our bodies, but just a conversation that was had in someone's reality. It's been a hot topic here this week, and then you titled your show "Poop Culture," and so we had a laugh that, like, you must have known. But I was wondering what it was about. So cool. I'll go take a listen to that. Ross Hamlin in the house. Ross, maybe I'll get to cross paths with you this week. Maybe we can meet at your favorite coffee roasters for a cup or something like that. And thank you, Nigel. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. And Sophia says 2 shots of mezcal on her. We can take care of that this week. We can have mezcal together this weekend. All right. Let's see. Okay, I think that was the only all caps question or comment. Does anyone else have anything before we head out the door? Going once, going twice. Oh, is there another? Hold on a second. No, that was the same one. That was the same one. All right.
No one has any questions for us. Thank
No
you.
one has, I think we've covered it all here today. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out. We sure enjoyed doing it. We missed it last week. And
Yes, I missed you. I missed all of you guys in the chat. I'm very happy to be back with you.
we'll be here next week. I don't know if we'll each be in boxes or we'll be side by side, but you'll get some version of us next week. So until then, have a no, we just talked about your show. I have nothing to, I didn't do to find that, go to Words Podcast, right?
Our commercial.
We missed a recording because Dani was out of town, so we're recording next week. So there'll be a new show up next week. But in the meantime, there are 99 previous episodes of regular Words Podcast available on wordspodcast.locals.com with the promo code Welcome to Words. Go check it out if you haven't already. And we will see you all next week.
Bye.